all good therapy is in fact exposure therapy. Now that in the biz is what we call a hook. Obviously there's nuance here, but let me explain. First, the disclaimers. I do not specialize in OCD and I am not formally trained in ERP. However, I use the metaphor or the example or the language of exposure therapy a lot with my clients. The reason for that is all of the modalities that I love to utilize as a therapist depend on reparative or corrective experiences. And in order for clients, in order for people to have corrective or reparative experiences, we have to be exposed to something that feels risky, feels scary, feels different. A lot of the work that I do is getting to the bottom of why people believe the things they do about themselves, about others, about the world. Because I really believe that we are adaptive creatures and everything that we do and learn to become in our lives at one point was helpful and necessary. And a lot of people find themselves in therapy trying to undo or change these skills, these strategies that are no longer working for them. And that's where reparative or corrective experiences and exposure therapy comes into it. So let me give you a very simplistic example. Let's say I have a client who really struggles to communicate their needs. And when we dig into this, it becomes very clear that this was an adaptive strategy that helped them survive different relationships in their childhood. And now, as an adult, they're struggling in their relationships because they're expecting other people to read their mind, or they're growing resentful because their needs aren't being met. And listen, it's pretty easy just to say, well, hey, have you tried just expressing your need to your partner? Because your partner's not your parent, right? So why don't you just say it to them? I tend to work with a lot of intellectualizers, so it's not uncommon for me to have someone say, I know my partner is a safe person. They have never given me any indication that they wouldn't meet my needs, but I am still so terrified. I just can't get over this deep fear that I have based on my past experiences. So this is where framing it as exposure therapy can be especially helpful because it validates, hey, changing this pattern is not going to feel good at first. When you try to do this differently, your brain is going to set off all sorts of alarm bells to try and get you to stop because it has developed this way of being in order to protect you. And we need to develop skills and tools and strategies to help you get through the exposure anyway, to help you try it. And then we need to be able to process and integrate positive experiences where you go through the exposure, it ends differently or it goes well in order to slowly over time help your brain form a different belief about how these types of things go. If you really think about it, this exposure metaphor applies to almost everything in therapy because making change is uncomfortable.